ahead.
Well, what made you want to go into the Coast Guard?
Young lady, I was playing baseball. 1939, I was signed by the Yankees to play baseball. I played baseball for 2 years in the minor league. My second year, I caught a disease called rheumatic fever. It's called by a strep throat. And that knocked me out of baseball. And I was ill for about, 3 months. Well, when the war broke out, I went down to join the Naval Air Corps. And they wouldn't accept me because I had the rheumatic fever. It left me with an enlarged heart. So I had to find another service that would take me. So the next thing I do, I had a couple of boys I played baseball with, and they said they were going into the U.S. Coast Guard. Well, I hadn't heard of it, but I went down, and they gave me an examination, and they accepted me into the Coast Guard. So that's how I actually got into the U.S. Coast Guard.
So it wasn't your first choice?
Beg your pardon? It was my second choice. Naval Air Corps was my first. I wanted to fly.
What was basic training like once you had joined?
When I took training, it was in New Orleans. I was there for 3 months. We took training with the Marines. It's pretty rough training. The Coast Guard used to be a service by itself. Mm-hmm. Then, when the war broke out, the U.S. Navy took over the Coast Guard. Coast Guard had did nothing before but just guard the coast and did rescue work in small boats around the nation.
All right.
But the Navy took us over.
Mm-hmm.
Where were you when World War II started?
Well, I was in Springfield, and as a matter of fact, I was in my front yard, and my mother called me in and told me that war had broken out. That's how I got my first notice.
Were you in school?
I was in Drury College, yes.
Okay.
I was in college, excuse me.
All right.
What did you major in?
I was going to go to law school, which I did after I got out of service, but I was majoring in economics and law.
Okay, so what did you think of World War II at the time?
Well, I really didn't think anything of it, seriously. I wasn't young, I was 19 years of age. And after reading the newspaper and how the atrocities were going on and how bad it really was, I decided, well, I'm going to have to get in the service. I didn't want to be drafted into the Army. I wanted to make my choice where I wanted to serve.
Did you know anyone who was drafted?
Oh, yes, several of my friends in high school were drafted. And most of them tried to go into the Marine Corps, went to the football players that I played with. Most of them went into the Marine Corps.
So, what were your emotions on your first day of basic training?
What was my emotions?
Yeah.
Well, it was pretty rough. I was scared to death for the first thing. I was the smallest one in the outfit. And when you take a look at a bunch of Marines who are going to train you, and they're tough, and they're harking at you, and they're jumping all over you, and you couldn't even bend over to tie your shoe or anything unless they jump on you. So I was pretty rough. I was pretty scared when I first got in.
So what was the difference between your first day on basic training versus your first day on the job?
Well, after I learned that the Marines are wonderful people, and I did what they told me to do, then I had a good time. Everything went fine.
So when you had joined for basic training and then further on, what was your schedule like through each of your stages in the military?
Well, my first day was New Orleans, and I was sent to Boston, Massachusetts. In Boston, Massachusetts, I did nothing more than do what we call harbor work. I was on small boats, just small boats about 30 foot long, and we'd go around and checking on ships that were coming in and out of the port.
Okay.
That was my first duty.
Okay, and then later on, like when you had grown up?
They asked me if I'd like to go to a school called Boatswain's Mate School down in New York. And I told them, yes, I'd like to. It wasn't for a commissioned officer, but it's what they call petty officers. Mm-hmm. So they sent me to New York. You probably will remember, but the commander there was a man by the name of Jack Dempsey. He was the world heavyweight boxing champion at that time. And he was what we would call our commander of the Boatswain's Mate School. And I also had met a boy there that I had known in high school, in college, played football with him, and he was the athletic director there also.
Okay.
And when I got to Boatswain's Mate School, they knew I played baseball, so I also got on the baseball team, so on weekends I was about the only one who had time off.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
What was your very first operation you did?
All right, the very first operation, after I got out of Boatswain's Mate School, I was sent to Newport, Rhode Island, and I was put on what we call an 83-foot rescue boat. Now, at the time it wasn't rescue work, we were doing submarine duty. We had eight depth charges on the rear, and we had two 20 millimeter guns on deck. And we'd go up and down the East Coast looking for submarines. Thank goodness we never found any or saw any of them. But we did patrol duty from Block Island up around Cape Cod down to Long Island, New York. And I did that until I got ordered to go overseas.
Do you have any memorable stories that you'd like to share with us?
Sure will. I'll tell you about one. When D-Day came and I went across the ocean, and they picked up I was on an 83-foot cutter. And that's what we were called Rescue Flotilla Number 1. They picked up our little rescue boats and put them on Liberty ships. They took two rescue boats and put them on one Liberty ship, and they took us over to England. Now, we had no idea what we were going to do over there. But when we got there, we found out that we were going to do rescue work into Normandy, on the invasion beaches. All right, well, going across the channel now for D-Day, it was real dark in the morning. And I knew I had a good friend that I played football and baseball with in high school. His name was Ralph Carter. And he was a lieutenant on an LST, which was carrying troops over for the D-Day landings. Now, I knew he was on this ship, and we were going to do a little convoy duty going across the channel, following these boats in. If any of them got sunk, we'd pick them up. Well, here it is darkness now, and there's over 5,000 ships going across this channel for D-Day. Think of this. And we were going up and down the line of boats, just protecting them. I looked up and I saw LST number 50. And LST 50 was Ralph Carter's boat. And just by luck, I happened to find his boat. And I stopped there and I yelled at him. I said, "Do you have a Lieutenant Ralph Carter aboard?" And here it is, completely darkness. And this sailor up above says, "Who are you?" And I said, "I'm Jack Hamlin from Springfield, Missouri. I know your commander, Ralph Carter. Can I talk to him?" He said, "Just a moment." So he brought Ralph Carter to this deck of this big old LST. Here's my little old 83-foot cutter down. And he looks down at me and he says, who in the hell is this? I said, "Jack Hamlin." He says, "What are you doing in that rowboat?" Well, that made me mad. I said, "Let me tell you something, Lieutenant, and I'm just a little seaman. I'm not an officer. If your LST gets sunk, you'll be the last man I'll pick up out of the water to save your life." If I could hear the boys in the darkness laughing that got on him. Well, that's the last time I saw him. He did survive. And he went on to, matter of fact, before he was in the service, after high school, he went on to Missouri University and played football there for 4 years. He was a good football player. But that's one of the stories that I have there.
So, did you have many friends in the military at the time?
I didn't know anybody at all when I joined with two friends I knew, yes. But after I got other places, I never met another friend. I mean, everybody was new to me on board the 83-foot cutter. And when I was overseas, I didn't meet anybody that I knew from home or like that.
You didn't make any friends when you were...
I made a lot of friends. French girls. Oh, yes. I tell you. After D-Day, I was stationed... after D-Day, our cutter was sent to Cherbourg, France. And there we were doing transport duty again, back and forth the channel, bringing soldiers over from England to Cherbourg port so they could fight in the war.
So you were stationed in France at one time?
I was stationed there for about 6 months in France, in Cherbourg, France. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so when you had heard about the attack on Omaha Beach,
Yes.
what were your emotions like
All
on
right,
your
on
way there?
Omaha Beach, I'll tell you. Our duty on the 83-foot cutters, we had 60 Coast Guard cutters going to the 5 beaches. There are 5 beaches, 2 American beaches, Utah and Omaha Beach are the Americans where they land. The Sword, Juno, and Gold are the 3 beaches where the English and the Canadians land. I was assigned 15 cutters of the 60 were going to Utah. 15 of the cutters went to Omaha Beach. Omaha Beach, as we can all read in the papers, was the toughest one of all. We lost over 2,500 boys that one morning in the landing.
Mm-hmm.
My duty was to go along with these little landing barges into the beach. Now, when we stayed out of the way of them until they got to the beach, if we saw one of them hit over here or somebody drowning, that's the only time we went in. We'd go into Maybe it's 500 yards off, maybe it's 1,000 yards off the beach. I never got to the beach at all. I was off the beach. We would go in and pick these wounded soldiers up out of the water, hoist them aboard our Coast Guard cutter, then we would take them out to the hospital ships. They kept the hospital ships 10 miles off the beaches. See, that's out of the range of the German guns, where they couldn't hit them out 10 miles. So we had it pretty tough. We picked these wounded soldiers, some of them with their arms gone and legs gone.
No, you're fine.
Okay, take your time. You don't have to talk about it if you don't want to.
It's pretty rough.
Mhm.
But we were taken back out. We made about, altogether we only made 2 trips. It took so long to pick them out of the water and then take them to hospital ships.
Yeah, understandably.
So during D-Day, your role was to pick up the people
Mhm.
that had drowned or were drowning. But how did that affect you?
At the time, you wouldn't think about it.
You just had to save your people
That's
as best
exactly
as you
it.
could.
See, when you grab them, there was 2 of them that were small. I weighed about 150 pounds, so they'd put a line around me. I would jump into the water, and I'd go pull the soldiers to the boat. And the larger boys on my cutter would pick them up, pull them out of the water, put them on the deck. And on our first, I couldn't tell you. I've talked to 3. All of my crew's dead except 1. There was 13 of us on the cutter, and they're all dead except 1, and he's in pretty bad shape. He's 89 years old. And you didn't know what injuries they really had. So you got them on board the cutter, then you could try to help them out. We had none of them die on us after we got them on our cutter. We were very lucky there. And after we made about 3 trips out to the hospital ships and back, picking them out of the water.
So, related to all the other soldiers in your crew, what age range did you fall in? Were you more of the older people, older of the group, or the younger?
We were all young. We had some 18-year-old boys on my cutter.
Right out of high school.
And the oldest one was a chief boatswain mate, and he was 52. And then my ensign was a young boy, the one in command of my boat. He was about 39. He just got out of the Coast Guard Academy.
All right.
So where exactly were you whenever World War II ended?
Well, I was sent home in October of 45. So I was back in Springfield, out of the service in 45 when the war was over. I got home, then I had to go back to St. Louis to be actually discharged, and I was discharged just about 5 days after the war was over.
So your contract had ended just as the war had ended?
Mm-hmm. Had 4 years in the service.
Yeah, what did you do after D-Day?
Well, went back to college, got my degree at Drury College, and then I wanted to go to law school. My father was a lawyer in town, so I went to law school. I started out at Missouri University, and I wasn't doing too good. I got a call to go out to California and play baseball again. And I wasn't doing too good in California. My father called me. He says, I want you back to Springfield. I want you to go down to a law school with me, where I went to law school in Tennessee. So after I quit baseball in California at the service and went down to what they call Cumberland University. It's out in Nashville, Tennessee. And I graduated from law school there. Now, I never did pass the bar to become a lawyer.
Mm-hmm.
After I was going to law school, I had a chance to play baseball again in the Northern League. So I went up into South Dakota and played baseball again.
Did you ever, get into the majors, or were you just...
No. The highest I ever got was just about AA. I played at Joplin, Missouri. That was the highest.
Mm-hmm.
It was the Western Association. I played with the Yankees in the minor leagues.
All right.
I couldn't hit the doggone curveball.
Yeah.
Now I've got a grandson
when
that's playing baseball here.
Jack?
You know Jack?
Yeah.
Do you?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Don't tell him I was just bad, okay?
Is that why he started playing baseball, or do you think you were an influence on him?
I hope so. His dad was also a good little athlete. Didn't
Mhm.
play in school, but he was a good on the side. Was a very good athlete.
When you had played in California, did you like what team were you kind of
It was an
signed by?
independent team,
Mhm.
and a good friend of mine. I knew the lady here in Springfield. It was her brother. His name was Larry Barton, and he used to play for the old St. Louis Browns a long time ago against Babe Ruth,
Mm-hmm.
as a matter of fact. And he called me up and knew that I was waiting to see if I could pass the bar. He said, "Jack, would you come out to California and play with my semi-pro team? I need a team out here." So I did go out there, and I played with him for about 2 months, and I wasn't doing good. And that's when my dad called me. I'm 53 and 54. I played with Whitey Herzog,
Oh wow.
Jerry Lumpy. I played with the Springfield Generals here in town. And we had a semi-pro team here. I was 53 and 54. And we won the state tournament, and we went to the national tournament in Wichita. We never did win it. We did in the second year, in 54, we were runner-up, Boeing Bombers beat South in the finals.
So you played with Whitey Herzog?
Oh, and what a guy he is. Let me tell you, to me, he's the greatest manager the Cardinals ever had.
Mm-hmm.
He played my kind of ball. He loved to run, he loved to bunt, he loved to sacrifice, he'd take all the chances in the world. He had it all up in there. Believe me, he did. And he's a good baseball player on his own.
Mm-hmm.
He was very good. And a wonderful person. I see him every once in a while. He had a good friend here in Springfield that I played ball with, also Jerry Lumpy.
Mm-hmm.
Played with the Yankees. He played with the majors. And he played with us also on the Generals here in town. We went to the state tournament. So Whitey Herzog came down quite often just to visit with Jerry Lumpy, and we go fishing together.
All right.
So, how did the war impact your life after when you came back?
You know, a lot of the boys don't talk about the war. I don't mind talking about it because I don't consider, what you say, a hero. Because my heroes were the ones that I saved their lives.
Mm-hmm. Which is probably kind of cool to hear. Not necessarily cool, but interesting because you saved your heroes' lives instead of your hero saving you.
And there's a lot of people who don't like to talk about the war, but I think it's good to let the young children, I hate to call you young children,
No,
but
it's okay.
they need to know exactly what happened, how bad it is.
Mm-hmm.
And I thank you for inviting me over.
Of course. So, would you say you're against war?
I beg your pardon?
Would you say you're like opposed to war?
No, I'm not opposed at all. No, I'm not that kind. If it has to be done, it has to be done. I don't know about what's going on right now. I have friends, and I've been to France 5 times. I'm going back again this time for D-Day in June. I leave on May 31st to go back again. Be my 5th trip. Now, 1994, I had the honor of being invited to have dinner with the Queen of England.
Oh wow.
In 1994. I was only one of 75 Americans that were in D-Day that were actually invited to have dinner with the Queen. Wonderful lady. The greatest thing was the Queen was young. She had a Queen mother who was still alive. We had a tent for the Canadians, a tent for the Australians, a tent for the Americans, a tent for the English, and certain tents before the big dinner. Well, before the big dinner, the Queen Mother came around to all the tents. Now, that Queen Mother she was in her about 90 then. She was a wonderful lady. She came by and saw every one of us. Now, it was raining. She had an umbrella and people helping her out, her escorts. But she came by to see us all in the rain, the Queen Mother. Now, that was an honor for the Queen Mother to come by before the dinner, the mother of the Queen.
What was the dinner like?
It was wonderful. I didn't know what to do, whether to bow to her, kiss her hand, or what.
That's
I didn't kiss her on the cheek or anything. It was the idea that I did hold her hand and thanked her very much.
Yeah, not many people can say that they met
That's
the Queen
exactly
of England.
right.
Do you remember what her name was?
Well, I was Queen, not Margaret. That's the daughter's one. What was it? Not Elizabeth. The Queen was Elizabeth. The Queen Mother, what was her name? You got me.
What year
See,
was
I didn't
it?
do too
I bet
good.
we can. I bet
yeah,
we
we
can
could probably look it up later.
But that's.
Yeah, that's pretty cool to be able to
I
say
think
that you
pictures-
met the Queen.
I've had honors also. This picture right here is Helen Patton.
Mm-hmm.
She is the granddaughter to General George Patton. I met her, had dinner with her, and with this lady right here also. This is Jane Hartley. She is the U.S. ambassador to France from the United States. This gentleman back here is Jim Martin,
In the
Pee
suit?
Wee Martin. He's with the Band of Brothers. He was my roommate over there. He's one of the last of the original Band of Brothers, the movie Band of Brothers. All right, I left the magazine here. I want you to look at it when you get time. It's so sure. But when I go back, I stay in the headquarters of where the Band of Brothers were in Angleville, New Plain. Now, there's a Colonel Zink was the man who was the head of it, and Dick Winters was the main one of the Band of Brothers. If you heard the name, everything's Dick Winters and Bob Zink. All right, I stay in Bob Zink's room. I should have brought another picture that I got, but I got initiated into his bathtub. The original bathtub from D-Day. On the second day of D-Day, that's where he took his bath in the house that I'm staying in.
Mm-hmm.
I stayed there the last 2 years. I'm staying there again when I go over in May.
Wow.
Go this year. This is the general of the U.S. Army of all France right here. In this picture, I got wrote on the back of it, it's Point de Hoc. I think you've heard of it. But he's had my picture taken. That's where the Rangers climbed. That was a dangerous part.
Wow.
Point de Hoc.
So, like, what was it like when you came back to America after, like, the war was
Well-
over? Like, was it sort of a culture shock after being a part of the military and then coming back to, I guess, real life?
Real life, we all met. We had so many boys coming back from high school. In high school, we added up. We lost 27 out of my class to the war. They didn't come back. But there's so many of them that did come back, and we all get together after we meet certain places. And for about a year, we enjoyed each other.
Okay.
So how does your time in the National Guard and your time in the war affect your day-to-day life now?
I'm as mean as ever and nasty as ever, and I still get in trouble. At 94 years of age, I try hard, but I try to keep my grandson out of it, though.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, when you were gone for the war, how did that affect your family?
Well, my dad, of course, my mother didn't want me to go in the service. And
That's
she
just
thought
what
she-
mothers want.
Well, she thought sure I wouldn't because I had the rheumatic fever.
Yeah.
And I didn't, as a matter of fact, my personal doctor says, I'll give you a slip. You could be 4F if you want to be. But I didn't want to be. At that time, I was cocky and I thought I was great. I thought I was a hero then. And I said, no, I'm going to go in the service. Well, when you go in the service, you don't think you're actually going to get in any kind of battle. You think they'll put you in service and you maybe have it easy. But when you go in the service, you forget about that. You're not going to have it easy. When you start training, you'll find out that it's a rough thing.
So, what exact year did you start in when you joined the National Guard? What year did you go into the war after you completed basic training?
In 1942, February the 2nd. After I was turned down, the war broke out in December of 41. In January, I went down to take the examination for the Naval Air Corps. I made my mind I wanted to fly. Then after 2 weeks, they found out I had to go back the second time to take an electrocardiogram on my heart to make sure it was enlarged. They took a second exam. And my doctor at that time told me, said, Jack, they turned you down because of your enlarged heart from rheumatic fever. He said, now here I can give you a slip. And you'll be deferred from the service.
And you'll never have to serve.
Never have to serve. And I'll tell you, I don't ever remember, because it's a long time ago, but I don't ever remember ever taking an examination for the Coast Guard. I'm sure I took it, but they had my papers from something. But I don't ever remember taking the physicals. It must not have been hard to take. I got in anyway.
Was the fever that you had very common, or was it a
No, as a matter of
relatively
fact,
rare thing?
when I caught rheumatic fever, it came back, they put me in the Old Birch Hospital over on Jefferson Street. There was 4 of us in there. All of us were young children. I say children, if some of them were 12 years old and I was 18, 19, 17 years old. The other 3 died. I was the only one who lived out of the 4. And how it happened to me, they discovered, I'm talking an awful lot, I'm sorry.
Oh no, that's what we want.
My doctor discovered a pill called sulfamilamide. And it was not discovered in time when the other 3 were dying. But I got there just in time. They were already had rheumatic fever within the hospital. When I got there, they discovered the sulfonamide pill. And my doctor, Dr. Max Fitch, I'll never forget him. He's the one that prescribed the sulfonamide pill, and it saved my life. And my doctor, you don't hear that now, but my doctor stayed with me for the first 2 nights I took his stayed in the hospital.
Like
Of course,
you never
his
left.
office was on Commercial Street on the north side, and Burge Hospital was just down a little bit. But in the nighttime, he stayed with me in the hospital and saved my life.
Do you remember his name?
Max Fitch. And he was mean. The nurses hated him. He'd go through the hospital, and the nurses come in and see me, and then he'd leave. And they said, "Oh, he's the meanest man there was." But he was very dictative. He just jumped over if something was done wrong, he'd just jump over the nurses, and they didn't like that. They thought that's why he was mean, I guess.
After you got better from your disease,
What, hon?
after you got better,
Yes, ma'am.
how long did it take you to like get back to being super active?
Quite a while. I weighed about 145 pounds. I got sick, and I got down to 81 pounds.
Oh wow.
I really, just a skeleton. And it took me out of the hospital, took me home, and I laid in the bed probably for a little over a month. And I started gaining my weight back. And right now, I weigh exactly what I weighed when I was in college, 151 pounds. So I'm very lucky. I never smoked a cigarette in my life. And I give credit for that. Anyway, I've done a little drinking off and on. I shouldn't tell you that, but not bad. You want to ask me any more questions? It'll be fine.
I think that's all we have, unless you would like to tell us some more stories from your time in the war or after.
Well, I'll tell you this. When I go back again, I have met the sweetest little French girl. She's 39 years old, and she works for the French embassy, and she takes care of the old veterans that come back for D-Day. She makes accommodations for them. In other words, she gets them a room to stay, and she gets their food free when they come over. And she also raises money through her. She works at a school, and I'm going to go back to school. I made speeches there last year at the school, and I'll make speeches to the school in Port Vale, they call it, France, in Normandy. And she's asked me to come back to the school. So I'm going to go back, and I'm going to speak at her school again. And she takes care of me whenever I go over there. And she has her car. If I want to do anything, she comes where I stay and picks me up and takes me anywhere to ceremonies like that. Well, I invited her to come to the United States. And the 82nd Airborne has her come to the States every year. The 82nd Airborne, the members that were in D-Day or in Vietnam, soldiers. And they invite her to come, all expenses paid, to come to their reunions, because she's always nice to them also. Well, I invited her to come see me. Well, my wife passed away 3 years ago, and I have 3 children here in town. I said, I'm going to bring this young girl. She's going to live with me for 5 days. Well, they said, no, she's not. I said, yes, she is. I said, I've got my brother-in-law living on one side of me, and I got the lady I'm going with, I got her grandson living on the other side of me. So that young lady's going to stay with me. Well, she did. We had a wonderful time. I treated her. She came and stayed 5 days in France.
Oh,
So I'll go back and see her again. Now then, in just about a month, I'm going to jump out of an airplane.
You will?
I will.
Wow.
I was going to do it 2 years ago. I went down to Make-A-Wish down in Tulsa, and the weather didn't let us. Well, these paratroopers that I stayed with last year all said, okay, Jack, we're going to jump. That was 2 years ago. Well, they already told me again. I had a birthday party last October, and they gave me a certificate, all taken care of, video and everything else, and we're going to jump here in Springfield in just about. As a matter of fact, Colonel Stark is in charge of it. This one I'm going back to Normandy with this time. He's a paratrooper, and we're going to tandem jump out of the plane here in Springfield within about a little over a month.
Are you excited?
I'm excited.
I think that'd be fun.
I see President Bush
Mhm.
jumped out of an airplane when he's 91. Well, I'm 94, so I'm going to I'm going to write him a letter too.
So do you do a lot of public speaking, like give speeches about
I
your
made a
time?
nice speech. Well, I call it. I made a speech to Kickapoo last Memorial Day to the whole students. I go to most of the schools. Yes, I've made about, I'd say maybe 20 speeches to the schools.
Wow. It's pretty impressive.
Just because when my great grandfather was in the war,
Yes,
I think
sir.
he was part of the army and was stationed in Iceland. He would go to D.C. like after he was back, and he would go to D.C. with my uncle. Do you go to D.C. often? And look
I
at
went
all
back
the
once with
memories?
the honor flight. I went. My wife had just passed away in March, and I went in June that year of 12. I went over to the honor flight. I sure did, and I'm on the honor flight board now.
Okay.
I've been helping them raise money. As a matter of fact, we're having a big fundraiser at the Tower Club the 15th of this month. I help them raise money for that. We send all the boys over. And it's wonderful to go back and see everything. I didn't want to go at first, but before my wife died, she talked me into going. And I'm glad I went. And I helped raise money to send a lot more of the veterans back. And I'll tell you, there are not too many of the old World War II boys alive right now. We only found really 10 to make the last trip they were able to go. And there's so many of them now that are in the wheelchairs. I feel so lucky. And when I went in 12, we had 75 go, and half of them were in wheelchairs.
Wow.
How does it feel to go back to the place?
It's wonderful. It is really. And the people there at Normandy are the most wonderful people you ever meet in your life. Now, Paris and all that. The Germans were real good to the people in Paris. And it's odd, but the people in Paris, and I've been to Paris and I stayed one night there, they don't treat you anything like the people that live along the beaches in Normandy. Because they saw what went through with the paratroopers and all the boys being killed there. And they're wonderful to you. And I tell you honestly, I've never kissed so many old ladies. Pretty good looking otherwise. God, they make any difference. But they all come up to you. They're so appreciative. They just grab you and they want to give you this and give you a bottle of wine. Oh my heaven. Really. If you just bring all that wine home, you have a house full of wine. They want to give you everything they have. And the small children, the children in school are very attentive also. I go to a high school there, because this young lady that I know teaches her at the school. And that's why I go to her school and speak. And they don't understand English, but they have an interpreter there. And they have 5 of us. They had 4 paratroopers from World War II and myself there this time. And the children have questions for us, and then we'll try to answer their questions. But they were wonderful to us. The people in Normandy, I love them.
Did you receive any medals or honors?
2 years ago, I got the Legion of Honor from the French. Now that's
I think I saw that on a
that's the
news
highest
interview.
honor they give you.
Wow.
And I'm very fortunate to have that, and I like it very much. And I have a Bronze Star, but that's from the Coast Guard, from the U.S. Army, I mean.
So what exactly was your occupation? Sorry to skip around, but after you finished playing baseball?
I went in insurance business. I had my own insurance agency for about 35 years on the north side, represented 5 different companies, had 3 girls in my office and 1 other boy selling for me. And then when I got a little older, my cousins were what they called the Hollis Insurance Company here in town. And they asked me if they'd like to buy me out, would I come over and join them? So I joined my cousins for about 10 years and worked at Hollis Agency with them. Then I sold out to them. And now I'm just playing golf and fooling around with women. Yeah, I don't tell my grandson that. No, it's a funny thing. I'm going with a lady now, and I knew her 77 years ago. I was in Drury College, and she was in Jarrett Junior High School. Well, I asked her brother, because her brother and I were good friends. We went to school together at high school and in Drury College. And I said, I'd like to date your sister. She's an awful good-looking little girl. He said, well, ask her. So I asked her to go out with me. Well, I had to go by one afternoon and pick her up, and she was in Jarrett Junior High School. Now, Jarrett Junior High School, you're kind of young. And here I'm in college. I had an aunt. Have you ever heard of Shirley Temple?
Yes.
Yeah.
Shirley Temple, my aunt, great aunt, was the instructor, tutor for Shirley Temple when she was a child. out in California. Well, my aunt had graduated from Drury College, and she graduated with this lady I'm going with, some mother in college. So she used to call home, my Aunt Pearl, call her, to my mother. And she said, Mary says, how's Alice Louise, that's my sister, doing? Well, Alice Louise is ready to graduate from Drury College. She's doing very good. She's getting ready to go down to University of Georgia and establish a Pi Beta Pi sorority chapter down at Georgia University. She's doing very good, and she'll graduate from Georgia University. Oh, how's Jack? Well, Jack's doing pretty good in Drury. He's about to flunk out, I think, but he's going to go play baseball. Is he doing anything else? Well, my mother told her she's dating a young girl by the name of Margaret Jesuit. And my aunt spoke up and said, Mary, I think I graduated from some of that name from Drury College. How old is that girl? Well, my mother found out she was 15 years old. I never dated her again. That was the last. My mother said, no. Well, at 77 years, her husband passed away 7 years ago, and mine passed away 3 years. And we only lived about that time about a block apart. I lived on East Catalpa, and she lived on Fairway. And I asked her one day, would you like to have another date again? She said, sure, I'll go out with you. We've been going out now for 2 years.
Aww.
That's 77 years.
Wow.
That's quite a story. Her name was Banta. You ever hear of Chuck Banta? Chuck was a good football player. Went on to Missouri University and played with their son. They had food products here in town. Banta Foods. But we're together now after 77 years.
Wow.
And I have the 3 children, and I have 6 grandchildren and 1 great-grandchild. And I've got Jack Porter and Anna. And Anna will be over here before long. She's a beauty. She's a little gymnastics. She loves gymnastics. She won a beauty contest down in Dallas. So I think she's pretty. Now I brought all these things for you.
Oh,
And there's an
thank
article
you.
also in here that I'll brag about it. Your ego gets the best of you. This is our Coast Guard manual that I take all the time. This tells you in here, right here about my visit back in where I stay and everything.
Aww.
So I just leave those with those pictures y'all can just
Oh, really? Thank you.
Thank you.
We
Okay.
appreciate that.
Yeah, thank you for talking to us.
I appreciate you asking me over.